Hey ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of dentistmetrics.com. In every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice. Hey guys, today's show is a clip from a past interview that I had with a well-known figure in the dental industry, Howard Farran of Dental Town. Dr. Howard is a true entrepreneurial dentist who he has an MBA. He really enjoys the business of dentistry. He's provided a lot to the dental industry, especially to the small single owner dentist. Creating Dental Town, a place where all dentists can connect and share information, share cases, share horror stories, share successes. Connecting all the dentists in the world through a website has been a big deal. And so Howard is a visionary in his own regard. So Howard had me on his podcast. We're going to show a bit of that segment today in case you missed it. I believe it's episode 147 of his podcast. And he's actually going to be a guest on this podcast in the next couple of months. But first, here are a few things you're going to hear about today. We're going to talk about some of the items of appointment by appointment, how you know if you're making money or losing money, what sets apart millionaires and billionaires in terms of the roles that they have on their employees' teams, the business quote that Bill Gates lives by that's applicable to dental practice owners. We'll talk about the accounting software and practice management tools that I personally recommend to my private clients. We talk about the metrics in your business and a lot of other really cool things that Dr. Howard is really, really great at pulling out of interviews. He's very quick-witted. He's very curious about a lot of things. So he really tries to get to the root of all the problems, and he's really, really good at interviewing. And so I think it was a really great interview. So we went over a few things that I don't normally cover in interviews on the show because I was the guest rather than the host. So we want you to be able to listen to this podcast and really get the information out of it. So if you are interested in today's bonus, I'm going to be sharing some quick exercises that you can use to get a grasp on the account in your business, to see what's going on in your business, to see where your practice is headed. So be sure to listen all the way through to this interview to get access to that. And so now, here's my interview on Howard Speaks, the founder of Dental Town, Howard Farran.
Well, I've always said that, dentists use a CPA, and the way CPAs are ran in the United States for the most part for small businesses is they're just preparing reports for a third-party tax collector, the IRS, if they were a little bigger, publicly traded, be for the SEC. But they're not giving them managerial accounting. They're not giving them financial accounting. They're just giving them tax planning, and you nailed it. That's not the core of metrics. That's not the core of your accountant. And what do you also think of the fact that dentists all run their business with this so-called management information system that doesn't even include accounting?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, the practice management software is in dentistry I feel like Open Dental is coming down the line for being a little bit more intuitive.
Right. I'm this close to converting the owner. The owner's a dentist, and his brother runs it, and I'm this close to selling him to add an accounting package.
Yeah.
Have you ever met him?
No, I haven't.
Pick up the phone and call him, because this dentist, he owns the whole deal. All he's got to do is make the decision. He's going to do it. And I told him I'll be his chief marketing officer for free the rest of my life. I mean, wouldn't that be amazingly important? I mean, the schedule is saying, okay, when I see Jonathan Van Horn and I do this filling, it's going to take me an hour. Well, the computer should know what that hour costs you. And if it costs you $200 and you just signed up for a PPO plan that's going to pay you $180 for that filling, the schedule could turn to red and says, okay, you're going to lose $20 on this procedure. So then the receptionist could move it down to 45 minutes, and now it turns green. Says, okay, now we're going to make $20. They just don't have. Dentists are smart people. They're wickedly smart. They just don't have the dentist metric. They don't have the metrics that you would have if you owned a franchise.
Absolutely. I mean, it's ridiculous that in today's day and age that the big practice management softwares consider themselves so proprietary that they don't allow this type of open access between softwares. Um, we use a different accounting software than I think any dental CPAs that I know of really use. We exclusively use a software called Xero, which is Xero, and they are kind of built on this openness platform of they're this really great, simple to use accounting software that plugs into all these other different APIs, or APIs is basically a way for one software to talk to another software natively.
Okay, so you email me, howard@dentaltown.com. I'll reply to the Open Dental people. Maybe we can all meet in Phoenix or at his place in Portland. I wouldn't mind going to Arkansas because my sister Kelly actually lives in Fayetteville, so I've been down there a lot of times, yeah. Where are you, Little Rock?
Little Rock.
And how far is Fayetteville from you?
About 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours? And so we'll get a 12-pack and you can drive me. And I'm just kidding. And but
I was gonna say, is there gonna be left for me?
I'm telling you, this would be the most important thing that we ever did in dentistry. I mean, talk about trying to leave a legacy in dentistry, just to get this dentist to see for the first time. How are they going to compete with corporate dentistry when they don't even know their costs? And I'll tell you another thing, being 52, of all the multimillionaires I met, whether they own a big dental company or it was Dan Carney, one of my childhood friends who's the founder of Pizza, they always say, you say, well, what's the secret to success? They go, well, most of your millionaires and all your multimillionaires and 100% of your billionaires, by the time they had 5 employees, one of them was a full-time bookkeeper or accountant. They always knew their cost. And you walk into 1,000 dental offices the last 28 years and see a person walk out of the room, and he just did an MOD composite, and I'll say, hey, doc, did you just net $20 after taxes, or did you just lose $18? To every one of them, I have no idea. So these there's about 7,000 dentists listening to this, or all alone. If they log on to dentistmetrics.com, what are they going to find? What do you do for them? How do I become a client? What are you going to measure? Walk through what you're doing to these dentists.
Sure. So dentistmetrics.com, it's not like a software or anything like that. It's kind of a common misnomer we get because I named it as a techie name. Again, I'm not a creative person, so I just thought, hey, we're measuring things so that they can be improved. And the counter to that is what's not measured is not improved. But the way that we go about the accountant CPA relationship with our clients is that we are going to help track what's important in your practice. We try to keep it on a simplified level because there's there's thousands of different metrics you could be tracking in a practice. It's really the ones that are important to your practice at that point in time are the ones that you need to be worried about. So, for example, if you have a startup practice, it's not going to be that great of a return on your time and your energy to be researching how to save 10% on your dental supplies. Because if you're only spending, let's say $10,000 a month on dental supplies, which is really high probably for a startup, you're going to be saving $1,000 a month. If you're spending all this time, energy, and effort, and you probably don't even have an assistant there that's able to help you at this point in time if you're a startup, then you're better off focusing your time, energy, and effort to be focusing on the marketing metrics, be focusing on getting the practice's name out there, getting brand recognition, getting the phones ringing, getting better at scheduling, getting better at case presentation, getting better at all these things. Whereas if you were just be focusing on your cost, your expenses, you're not going to be able to build the practice as well. The counter to that is that if you are a really big practice and you're at capacity, or you feel like you're at capacity, maybe you should be focusing on optimizing your schedule. Maybe you should be focused on optimizing your expenses. I mean, we have one practice that was a fairly big group practice, and they were spending close to 10% of their revenue on dental supplies, and we're like, look, let's just make these like really easy core competent changes and to your buying process, and we can save you significant amounts of money. And like literally the next day, the doctor called me and was like, I looked up like he was very skeptical at first because he has a great rep that I know personally, and he's a local person, and he was like, I didn't think I was going to find anything. He said, literally, of the 12 items that I looked up, I immediately found 10 savings on those on 12 of those that were at least 20%. And
Oh,
for this, yeah, just by doing a Google check is what we call it. And just looking at the numbers. And he was like, if I were to save 20%, this is a practice doing almost $3 million a year in revenue in collections. And, saving 20% on 10%, I mean, he goes from 10% to 8% on $300,000, save 20%, that's $60,000 a year. I mean, that's a significant sum of money over just changing some protocols on a practice. So we help people come up with those, figure out where the low-hanging fruit is in your practice, because not every practice is the same. And if we were to track every single number, the only way to do that is with some type of proprietary software, and that gets overcomplicated. In a perfect world, we'd have that. We'd have that, window between Dentrix, EagleSoft, Open Dental, and accounting softwares where we could track the inventory, supply costs per service. We could look at, your productivity per hour as a measurement of your, employees' ROI. We could do all of these different things that, if we overcomplicate it, we're not going to be focusing on the right areas. It would be great if you have like some type of sensor and alert that says this is way underperforming versus the standard. So to kind of go back into what you were talking about, so going on the website, you'll see a picture of me very cheesily in a very poor image that I put up there. That the site needs to be revised. But we help practices by tracking those numbers, doing an analysis over what the dentist goals are over the next short term, midterm, long term, and really trying to get a game plan together to where we can make those goals come to fruition. So we do that through benchmarking. We use industry standards, plus we use peer groups. So if you are a general dental practice in a rural area that does bread and butter dentistry, we can actually show you other rural areas that do bread and butter dentistry and look at your expense ratios as a percentage of revenue, just to give us an idea of what you could be doing from a expense ratio standard. We don't do any type of zero sum consulting, which is typically saying is like advertising and marketing. Now we can give ideas of what we've seen work, but we're not ever going to say like, use this type of copy or anything like that, because like I said, we're woefully uncreative. So us giving marketing advice would be a bad idea. And then we help people try and go towards a better practice, a better net income, so they can then go off and reach any goals they have that are not monetary. Like I said, we're a little bit different. Like whenever I came into this, I assumed that I was going to be somewhat different from the CPA world, and then I realized there's quite a few dental CPAs that are fantastic. And the only real difference that I feel like we do in that respect is, number one, we're completely cloud-based, so we're very technologically savvy from using different tools to make things more efficient from an accounting standard. And we only focus on the business. We don't do any financial planning or personal financial planning of any sort, because we feel like the business is what fuels all of those personal investments. And we feel like I'm not saying that there are CPAs out there that are biased like this, but for the way we structured the firm, we felt like it'd be better for us to be able to say, okay, let's put this money into the practice, rather than saying, okay, let's put this money into this type of investment in your personal side. We felt like that would be a little bit difficult for us to do, and frankly, I just like the business side more than I do the personal investment side. So that's the reason we set it up.
now, do you file do you do the tax work too, or does?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you do the tax and all that stuff. Yeah, I've always it's funny because every financial investor talks about a diversified portfolio and wants you to have 16 stocks in 8 different vertical sectors and all that stuff. But if you look at the 1,800 billionaires in the world, they had all their money in their own company. So it's like, if you want to be a billionaire, that advice doesn't work. And I've always thought, look at the Chinese stock market. It's down, 38% in the last 6 weeks. I've always thought, well, invest in your own business. That's your greatest return. That's where you have the control. So how much does it cost to be your client? Are your clients all around the United States, or are you more a local Arkansas play, or how does that work?
So So my local network got going a lot faster than, a broader reach. So about 75% of our clients are in Central Arkansas, but we're in about 12 states now. So
12 states. Do you have any in Arizona?
we just signed on a client a couple weeks ago from
My
Arizona.
gosh, you might have found a client with me. I've always wanted what you do. I've always wanted someone like that full time. I mean, I have two full time bookkeepers in house,
Hmm.
but yeah, but to say so start talking about what you're gonna why is it what metrics are you if this dentist calls you up today
Hmm.
and says, I really don't know my overhead. I use Dentrix, EagleSoft, SoftDent. I don't know my costs. I don't know if I'm making money or losing on a filling. The 9 out of 10 dentists participate in insurance plans. They don't know which plans they're making money on, losing money. But I just think my overhead's too high. So
Hmm.
I call up Jonathan Van Horn. I go to Dental Metrics, or I just call the 877-2665-2121, or I email you, Jonathan at dentistmetrics.com. How does this conversation work? How much does this cost me? Do you fly out and come to my office, or and what accounting software do I need to have? The zero? What if I'm on the Quicken or QuickBooks Pro or Peachtree? Walk me through how this works and what you're going to do, how much it's going to cost, and what are you going to measure, and how you're going to add value.
Sure. So let me talk. I'll talk first of
Was that enough?
that first phone
Was that
call.
enough questions in one question?
I am really good at going off into rabbit trails, so you're gonna have to probably remind me in about 10 minutes when I come off of this conversation. But the
Is
so
this the
what
Matrix or the metrics?
exactly. So we start off with, when we have a phone call with a new person that's coming on, we always like to find out about the practice itself. Find out more about the dentist, about what their practice does, who they serve, what their demographics look like. Are you, like I said, the bread and butter dentistry? Do you do high-end cosmetics? Do you do implants? Do you refer out anything? What do you do? Because that really kind of gives us a baseline for us to be able to give accurate advice. Because if we don't take into context what you're doing and what you want to do, then we're not going to be able to have a good conversation of where you're going to go, right? So we start out with that. We then will kind of craft a proposal of what you need versus what we can give. Some practices don't need as much as other people. We'll have people that have MBAs from undergrads or something like that, and then they don't need us to go over their financials with them every month. So we might have talk to them once every 6 months, and we might talk to them about their performance a little bit more often, or we'll give them reports that they can decipher pretty quickly. But we found whenever we actually talked to our dentist that came on from other accountants or CPAs, and even some from dental CPAs, that about 90% of them had never had their CPA actually sit down with them and say, okay, these are your numbers and this is what they mean, not other than saying, these are your numbers, here's your net income, and you're going to owe this much in taxes.
I've never met a single dentist that could tell you the difference between a statement of income, a profit and losses for the IRS versus a statement of cash flow versus a balance sheet.
Yeah,
I've never met one, and I'm 52.
hmm It's confusing. I mean, it's confusing for both sides of that, because we live in this world. Like, this is like as simple to us as reading a patient chart is. But at the same time, if you flip the script on that, it'd be like you trying to explain a patient chart to us. You would just assume that we know the majority and you give us the highlights, but we might actually need a little bit more of an explanation in order for us to ever understand that. And it might take us, 10 or 12 times to actually be able to read that. I always tell people that accounting is the language of business. It's a really great saying I like to say. And so if that holds true, then the financials are basically like the book, or they're the story of whatever business you're looking at that point in time. So it's telling us, what's happened. It's a history at that point for the most part. And then if we look into it, we can actually look for foreshadowing events, keeping in line with the language of business, to say that we can, divine out what's going to happen if things don't change. And then we can try and do our little choose your own adventure with the language part of writing our story by setting up these paths and goals for us to try and meet. And then whenever we actually focus on those goals, we tend to see that they actually they tend to happen a lot more often than they don't happen. If you just go blindly into something, you're typically not going to have a lot of success. If you have a focused horizon to where a path you're going on, it's a lot easier to meet those milestones and keep going for pretty much anything in your life. I mean, if you think back to something like when you're in dental school and you're trying to study for a big test, you don't focus on the areas that you know really well, right? You focus on the areas that you're worried about. You're focused on the areas that aren't as familiar. And so we try and get people try and find the areas where they don't realize they may not be familiar. They may not realize they're not doing well, because dentistry is such an interesting business model that a lot of people can make a lot of money and just leave money on the table and not realize it because they're comfortable. And so we try to make sure that doesn't happen. That was probably the story a little bit more 10, 15, 20 years ago than it is today, with as much competition as there is. Like there's an expanding retirement age. There's more dentists that are graduating from school. There's less people with the expanding retirement age. There's less people selling. So if there's less people selling, that means there's more startups happening, which means there's more competition. There's more corporate dentistry going on. And so it's just a more competitive environment. And I think it was Bill Gates that said, we always overestimate the amount of change that's going to happen in 2 years, but we always underestimate the amount of change that's going to occur over the next 10 years. So, keeping along with that saying, in 10 years, is dentistry going to look like it is today? I really don't think it is. I think it's going to just continue to be more competitive. And that's true with any good business model, right? If it's a good business model, then that's going to have more people flocking to it because it's a good model. Until there becomes a point of cannibalization a lot of the times, unless you can do these things to where you can really set yourself apart as a professional practitioner and a professional service provider, and make that personal connection with people to where they have brand loyalty. I could probably talk about this kind of stuff all day long, as far as from just a general business theory, model, marketing type aspect. But to kind of go back to what you were saying about for the cost, we typically see that we are structured to be cost, depending on where you are in the country. We benefit that we're in Central Arkansas. My staff, which is my staff, I have two full-time employees, or sorry, one full-time employee and one person that's transitioning into full-time. I have my office here, but they both work from home. They come into the office when they need to. I'm not that interesting of a guy to hang out with whenever I'm entering K1s into tax software or digging through accounting data to do meetings and things like that. So they don't come in very often. But we typically see that we're charged somewhere around 1.5 to 2 times what the local guy is, but we're typically less than most strictly dental CPAs as far as cost goes.
And so I call you up and I say, really, I don't really know my costs. What accounting software do you recommend that if they're starting a practice, start with a zero accounting, or do you dial into their Quicken or QuickBooks Flow, or does anybody? Am I so old? Am I the only guy using Peachtree, or do you have any other clients? Do you have any other clients on Peachtree?
I think we have no one on Peachtree. We have, of all of our clients, I'm not ashamed of how many clients we have. We have less than 30 clients, and that's on purpose because we like having personal discussions with people. Like you asked about how if I fly out. No, we don't fly out. We actually do exactly what we're doing right now. We have face-to-face meetings through the magic of the internet.
And do you like Skype or GoToMeeting?
I like Skype. I like it because it's more personal. We can hit share screen and just be able to talk back and forth. I can show them what I'm looking at. They can show me what they're looking at. If they're looking at some type of marketing projection or some type of proposal, then we can go over it together. They can just show it to me, and it's super simple. It's free. Everybody can download it. It's easy to use. GoToMeeting, you end up having a lot of issues with things like that. So I like to keep it simple. I mean, it's what I try to do as much as possible because I think that's usually the easiest thing to do for most people.
So you have 30. So you have 30 clients, and you dial into their software. Their accounting software, or do you dial into their practice management system?
Yeah, so we do. For some people, we do. Some people, that's not everyone has us do as high level of service as other people, and it's because they. It's not because they don't see the value of it. It's just because they are growing. Typically, they're growing, and they're more worried about growth than they are of optimization, I guess is a way of saying it. For the accounting software, it's all cloud-based. So we're a user on their accounting software that's on the internet, basically. And they hook their bank feeds up to the accounting software. It automatically pulls the data in, and they print their checks off of there. They do their day-end close for deposits. Their front office can enter the deposits in, or we can set up a form for them to use online, to where they just go in and, at the end of the day, they'll enter in their cash deposits, their insurance checks, their patient checks, and if they get any EOBs in for direct deposit or anything like that, credit card deposits, they just enter it into a form on the internet. We have it hooked up to actually send to the accounting software through, again, the magic of the internet. And we can, basically we can look up, that's a way for us to be able to add a value add of saying, hey, your person in the front who entered a deposit for this amount of money, this deposit never cleared. Why did it never clear? Is it something wrong with what they did out of the practice management software? Did the close not work? Because they'll submit those to us too. Some of them, again, we have an a la carte type service, so we can do whatever you need us to do or not do. And we actually hook up to their accounting software online. Some clients, we're in there 2 or 3 times a week, just clearing their transactions for them. So we actually work as kind of an outsourced bookkeeper in that respect, so that we're clearing and reconciling the transactions as they come in. So if anything comes up, we can look at it. That way the owner has a good idea of where their cash is at that day. If they go and decide to try and do a check, they'll know exactly how much is in there minus the outstanding checks. And they'll know that it's accurate because we're the one managing it for them. And again, that's not how we do everybody, but that's the typical way that we do it.
Have you ever found embezzlement?
Not from a point of someone messing with the practice management software. We found it from personal credit card payments, asking somebody why did you guys go to Walmart, or what did you buy from Walmart? Was this office expenses? We didn't. We don't shop at Walmart. Well, somebody is, and it was somebody taking a company card, basically. So
Now, if they gave you the access to this, do they have to worry about you embezzling from them? I mean, could you?
No, it's only a bank feed, so it only pulls the information. So they go into the accounting software, they hit they'll have a username and a password, just like it's as easy as logging into an email account. And you go in, you set up a bank feed. So let's say you use Bank of America. You go in, you say we set it up to say that it's a Bank of America account. You go in, you enter in your online username and password, and the software will pull the data feed out of that bank to where it will just come across as different data feed lines for us. So we'll see if it's a direct payment for an electronic debit card out of that account. Then we'll see, like I said, the Walmart. We'll see Walmart payment, and it'll have the date, the amount that was paid, and things like that. And then we can reconcile that on our end if we need to, or if someone's on the other side as a bookkeeper, they'll enter that payment in on their own. And so that's a way for us to do it. Specifically Bank of America, most of our clients actually do set us up a separate user account for online access, but they'll set it up. We have them set it up as a view only, so we don't have any power or control over the account. So that's how we do it.
I think, my biggest pet peeve after getting my MBA was the fact that, the management information system doesn't have an accounting software. And if you and I can convince Open Dental, which has the most raving fans on the internet. I mean, the neatest thing about Dental Town is I get to see what 200,000 dentists are thinking. I've been on that site all day, every day since 1998. If we could get them to put in 0 or whatever, that would be amazing. But the other issue I have with dentists is they don't believe in transparency. They want it for their government. They don't like they don't like communist countries. They don't like they don't like non-transparency and every other issue of their life. And then I walk into every dental office and I say to all the staff, they'll have 2 receptionists, 2 assistants. I just say, what's our break-even point today? What do we have to do to break even? Oh, I don't know. That dentist doesn't show us any of those numbers. So I want to ask you, do you believe in transparency of your metrics to the entire team, or do you think it's a secret thing?
I absolutely believe in transparency. To a certain degree, to a certain level. I mean, should the assistant know how much money is in the bank account? No. Should the assistant understand what numbers we're trying to get to from how much, if they're ahead of ordering supplies, yeah, absolutely. They need to know, hey, we need to be underneath, say, 6% of net production. That's what we've got scheduled out, about this much, and on average, we have this much of net production for a month. So we need to be shooting for around this amount in your budget. This is how much you have to be able to spend, because just like anything else in life, if you have, I call it expectations. So you've got to be able to set an expectation, number one, whenever you have anything. And so you're going to have to be open with why you're setting that expectation. You have to hold somebody accountable for doing it. So if they, pass or fail, did they do it right? Did they succeed, or did they fail? And then if they failed, was it because of the system, or was it because of the person? If it's because of the system, then you fix the system or train. If it's because of the person, is it because they were trained incorrectly? If that's the case, you train the person. And if it is because the person just isn't incapable of doing it, then you replace the person. I mean, that's kind of how I go about the management side of it. But as far as the transparency side, I'm a big believer in being open about numbers and things like that. Should you talk about profitability and how much money you're making? Probably not. As far as the trend goes between dentists, most of my clients are younger clients, so we came from this openness age of being, social media and everyone being in everybody's business, I guess. So we're seeing that that's a little bit easier for people nowadays, I guess. I definitely see that trend in some of the people that we've had that we've talked to about being older clients. Like I said, typically the age range, the higher the age range gets for me for talking to clients or potential clients, the lower chance of them coming on as a client is for a multiple of different reasons. But that's really how we see it. So you have to, again, kind of going back to what I said, you have to set an expectation. That's typically going to mean communicating some type of number goal, some type of quantitative pass-fail. Whether that is how fast you're answering the phone, or how many calls you closed that scheduled in, or how many people hung up on you, or how many reminder calls we made. There's got to be some type of quantitative pass-fail, which is going to come from a communication and transparency level. And then if you got to hold them accountable for it, you got to make sure that you track if they did well or not, and then hold their feet to the fire one way or the other. So does that answer the question?
Yeah. So I'm trying to guess what 7,000 individual dentists. Most of them are commuting to work when they're watching the Howard Speaks podcast, or they're on a treadmill or something like that. So I like the fact you're exclusive. You handhold. You're just 30 clients. If I called you up at 877-265-2121, and I told you, let's just say, is there an average your average client? Well, I'll reverse it. Describe of these 30 people. What is your average client? Why did they call you? Why are they keeping you? Why are you retaining your business? What are you really doing for them on the average? I'm trying to get to the point where this person driving to work knows if this is a fit or not.
Sure. So the average client that I have, they use me because, or they use my company is a better way of saying that, because they want to understand the numbers in their business, and they want it to be done. They want to be able to do it as hands-off as possible. So, like I said, we do as much hand-holding as we can. It's all literally automated. All of our clients have access to their accounting software, but I can tell you this much. They receive so much communication from us as form of reports and things like that we can see when people log into their software, and it's not very often.
Because it's not their interest. Because I get it. I'm a dentist, and I still see patients. And I mean, if you told me, here's your choice, you can go play 18 holes of golf or pull 4 wisdom teeth. Should I do the 4 wisdom teeth any day of the week? If you said, what's your choice, to go to a hockey game or go do a molar root canal? I mean, we love fixing teeth. That's why we studied for 8 years. We work with our hands. You come in, you're in pain. And we're a hero. You came in, you couldn't sleep, you're swollen, and we fix that stuff. We didn't go to school 8 years to learn a financial report. In fact, why do you even think it's important for a dentist to be able to read his financial report?
Because it's a way for kind of what I was telling you about before, the expectation and accountability. They need someone a lot of the times to be able to sit down with them and say, we're not doing great in this area. You may be comfortable with this area, but I need you to know that we can do better here. if you want to do better on it, these are 5 ways that we know that we've seen people be able to do this better. Are you interested in doing that? And a lot of the times they'll say yes, and because it becomes a point in time where the money that's on the table, they feel like they need to come and get it. And so we help them with basically we leverage our knowledge in the industry to be able to give them better actionable
Go
advice.
through some case studies of these 30 clients. Go through some case examples because you were
Yeah.
talking earlier how you Googled 9 supplies for a guy that had 10% sundries costs, and you found lower price all. So what do you recommend for solving that problem? Dennis thinking, yeah, my supplies are 8%, and what do you think they should be?
Yeah, sure. So, the number we always shoot for is 5%. Some practices can't do that because they have to have too big of a reliance on insurances. They have too big of write-off percentages. But we tell people to kind of put your eye on the prize at 5%. Continually be moving towards that goal. There's two main ways that we find that, or three main ways that we find that can effectively lower that. The first being that they do a certain price check. If they're the ones buying the supplies, we typically say you can set up a system that as long as you have a well-trained person in the front that can actually do this for you, then you need to set up a system to say, okay, if we order something more than, say, if an order is going to be more than $100, then we need or a certain item is going to be over $100, we need to do a price check on it. Just do a quick Google check on it, and then create a list of.
Okay, explain how to do a
Yeah.
Google check for price. I mean, I'm 52. I'm on Dental Town every day. I don't
Sure.
know. I've never done that.
Yeah, a Google check. You just if you have a supply order that you're about to make, you are about to order a supply. Say it's 5 different supplies. You pick one of those supplies. If it's an online payment way you're doing it, you copy and paste the name of that supply. You type it into Google, and you just hit enter, and then you'll typically see about 5 or 10 different websites come up that offer the same exact thing. Now, some of the big supply companies have these specially branded ones, so sometimes you get a little bit creative on those. But typically, there's other places to get the same items, because what the big companies typically do is they're acting as a middleman from the wholesaler, and you can go through other things. So the thing that always comes up with that is the gray market, which is where people have got the purchases from the supply company and then are reselling it or something like that. And there's that is absolutely out there, and each dentist has to look at these different vendors on their own to be able to tell if that's someplace they'd like to have it. But what we typically tell people to do in that situation is to look at test the vendor first with a small thing that's not.
Explain gray market one more time.
So there's a white market and the black market, and in between that's the gray market. The white market is whenever you go to, like, say, a Henry Schein or Patterson, and they sell something to you directly. That's going to be a white market, direct from that company to you. The black market is whenever somebody steals something from somebody, like they went to the back of Schein or Patterson and stole their specially branded supplies, and then they're selling it on eBay for pennies on the dollar, where it may be expired or something like that. That's the black market. The gray market is where someone like Henry Schein or Patterson has bought too much from a wholesaler and they're trying to liquidate it so they can free up inventory cost, and they may do that through some other small distribution company or web portal or something like that, to where they sell it for a middling price. But the thing that comes up with that is that they say that it's escaping me at this point in time, but if it's a certain company's
generic
item, and you get it through a gray market, you're not going to have a special warranty. They're saying that warranty is voided by buying it through the gray market.
When these 30 clients signed up with you, what was the most common inefficiencies that you corrected? I mean, was it high supplies? Was it high labor? What were you measuring at dentistmetrics.com where you added the most value? What was the most common problem you helped solve?
So we said that there's really, there's 3 areas that really kind of come to light. Staffing is always an issue with I would say that's typically the biggest problem we have. Trying to get to that 25% number. We found that there's the problem of being overstaffed. There's the problem of being understaffed. There's the problem of being of not having the production numbers to meet what is going on in your practice, but you have the right number of staff to do administrative work. So that number changes a little bit, but we always try and say, okay, you're at this percentage, for an example, say 25% after benefits, payroll taxes, et cetera. But in order for you to get to, if you're over that, I'm sorry, let's reverse that. If you're over that, here's what we'd have to get to in production in order for us to be at this level, given our current staffing cost. In order for us to do that, how many days are going to be open in the next 3 months? Okay, so if that's the case, this is your average write-off. So we got to get to this production level per day. That would mean that these hygienists would be doing these production levels, the doctor would be doing these production levels, and that's what we have to get to in order for us to be.
And when these 30 people called you, how many of them already knew their daily break-even point or their BAM number, bare ass minimum?
Yeah, a very, very few.
And so of your 30 clients, how many of them have you given a break-even point BAM number to?
Yeah, I mean they all understand how much what
I don't get it. And what I don't understand is that your team they want to be winners. No one wants to play in a losing team. And what I see, so many great CEOs said, if you give your team the problem, don't tell them how to solve it. Just tell them what the problem is, because you'll always be surprised at how they solve it. And gosh, when everybody says, okay, we have to get to this number, and then a cancellation will come their way, and they're all talking and they're working it, and they always want to drive home and say, we won. And we had a bunch of curveballs. We had some no-shows, some cancellations. We worked in this. We pulled this off hygiene. And I just don't know. I just can't comprehend why a dental office doesn't start with a staff meeting every day, talk about the numbers, and you just make it every day.
Yep. So, that pulls me to saying a lot to have to clients a lot of times. And, while I'm obviously, vested in having in the importance of numbers in a practice, at the end of the day, really, any business is about 85% people and 15% numbers, because the people are the people that are your patients that are coming in. It's the employees that are working it. It's the leader that's there. It's the community that's around you. The numbers are really just reflecting the performance of those people. So that's the scorecard, if you will. And so you've got to have a great team in order to be able to make these things happen. If you have a bad team, you're never going to make it. I mean, if you don't have and when I say team, I mean that literally, that it's got to be people that are, invested in your practice's growth to do better. They've got to understand what, a good day and a bad day looks like. They've got to be wanting to make your team a better place. And that is really the filtering system for crappy employees, to be honest with you. I mean, whenever you set systems up to be like that, if you've got that guy over there or gal over there that, they're just worried about, what time they get to go home rather than how everybody else is doing in the practice, that person's probably a bad apple that's going to spoil the whole barrel. I mean, you got to make sure that those things don't happen. And, if we see that happening over and over again, then we have talks about, the hiring process, the training process, and things like that to see if that's what is going wrong. So,
I think the problem is that humans, apes, monkeys, dogs, cats, they're pack animals. They're social animals. So they're hardwired not to confront you or tell you anything bad. So the dentist will just sit there and just coughing up blood clots because he just can't have an uncomfortable conversation with his hygienist or receptionist or whatever. And he's wanting to fire her for a year, and then she walks in and wants $1 an hour raise, and he says yes. So it's just you just have to work against biology. Speaking of staff, do you see any bonus systems? Do you think staff bonus systems, do you see them help an office financially, or is that not a game changer?
I don't think it's a game changer, because I think, like I said, human mentality. Bonuses are once appreciated, then expected, basically. I mean,
right.
It just becomes a social norm for them at that point. They don't think that they can, if they don't receive a bonus, it's not because they didn't do something well. It's because the person giving them the paycheck's a jerk.
Right.
So,
and then they give a Christmas bonus. Like how does a year-end bonus, like right now today is July 30th. How could a Christmas bonus be affecting my behavior today at work on July 30th?
And it's It's not. It's gonna end up taking like maybe the 2 to 3 weeks before that bonus gets calculated is when that's gonna be making the difference. I am big on rewarding people for performance. I mean, but in order to do that, you've got to set something up that makes sense, right? So you need to kind of say use that in line with where you want to go. So say right now you're at a 35% take home pay is after all the add backs for discretionary expenses in your practice. And you want to increase your gross collections by another $200,000 next year and reduce your overhead by another 10%. So go from 35% to 45% plus add another couple $100,000 at the end of the year. Set up your goals and performance metrics based off of those goals, not based off of what's going on right now, so that you can all be moving towards the same thing. And then whenever you get to those goals, whether you get there or you don't get there, reevaluate at that time, and then set your next goal. I'm a big believer in goals and systems of receiving those types of goals. I mean, I have goals for my company. I talk a lot about it with my clients and where they want to go. And a lot of times, people will have these, I'll talk about monetary goals, and a lot of people kind of blank out because they feel like they're already earning more than the people they grew up with. They earn more than some of the people in their community, the people they go to church with, the people they're friends with, the people they network with, whomever they are. So they don't have any income goals because they feel like they're already meeting them. And so then we have to say, okay, all this money is great, but at what point, what do you want to do outside of the money? And then if that's the case, if it's something else, like say they want to be able to spend, an extra 3 weeks doing mission projects next year in South America, then we have to, if that's your goal, then you're going to have to make your schedule that much more productive, or you're going to have to reduce costs, or you're going to have to do something to get to that point. So go that route rather than just being a numbers based of gross production and collections and then net take home and things like that. So if anyone out there is listening and you're one of those people that say, well, I'll probably make enough, I would like to make more, but I don't really have something driving me to do that, look on the outside of your business of what really moves you as a person. What makes you want to be something different? What makes you want to be able to go out and do something different in the world? Because in the end, that's going to drive you way, way more than saying, I want to make a little bit more money next year. And then that's going to help you set these systems up and actually lead your team to a certain area, because that is, if you fail, then what you're looking for in that goal will not happen.
How does a dentist know if his labor is too high that it needs to be solved by producing more, or if it's because he just has too many staff or she has too many staff?
Super, super difficult question.
Thank you. I take that as a compliment.
Yeah, no, but it's really good. And the reason is it's difficult is because it's different for every type of practice, right? I mean, some practices, they have no idea, and I empathize with this completely. The docs in the back office, and they're not able to keep up with, they can't go up to the front office and handle all that. All they're hearing about is the fact that they're super busy up there and there's patients coming in. So it's hard for them to be able to look at those systems and say, hey, this makes sense today, this doesn't make sense from the front office perspective and the back office perspective. I will still say this, if you have a small hygiene team and you have a small amount of doctor production a day, it's probably going to be harder to get up through the 25% level because you're going to have additional overhead. There's just a certain amount of people you got to be able to process through it. I know Sandy Purdue is big on Dental Town, and she talks a lot about the front office systems. And I think she has a number on there, I think it's something like 20 to 30 patients a day. I don't remember off the top of my head per front office person or something like that. And I think that's a great metric to use as a way to kind of give yourself a baseline understanding of, does this make sense or not. From an assistant standpoint, it's really, most docs know if their assistants are pulling their weight or not in that area. So we break everything down into.
I can say something. Being a dentist, a lot of these dentists, I think a lot of them are lazy. Like they'll sit there and get down to packing the cord. Okay, I can pack the cord in 1 minute, and they'll say, well, I believe in delegating, so I'm going to let my assistant pack the cord. And they'll get up and leave the operatory, take off their gloves, mask, throw it away, go get on Facebook, go waste 10, 15 minutes while they're packing a cord, and they got all these assistants because they don't work hard. And it's like, so a lot of it, like if you're using Isolite, your assistant can be doing far other things than just standing there suctioning. So sometimes that they think their dental assistants are pulling their weight, but it's because they're sitting on their butt half an hour of every hour in their private office surfing the internet when they could actually be working. Hey, you started you're the creator of the Journey to Dental Practice Ownership, an interview series where you interview dentists who have started their own dental practice as well as world-class consultants. Talk about that. Is that sound only or sound video?
Is it
a podcast or is it video?
Yeah, it's a podcast, a video podcast, much like what we're doing now. We use Google Hangouts to interview people. We actually changed the name since I submitted that. It's actually not out yet. It's July 30th. It's starting next week is the launch date.
We got 200,000 people on Dentaltown. You can put that on Dentaltown too, because the app, we have 35,000 downloads. Mm-hmm. So if you can, because what I understand about podcasts, a lot of people will put their podcasts on iTunes, which is free. But why would they put on iTunes and not Dentaltown when you got 200,000 focused people? But the people who have been putting them they're uploading it on the Dentaltown podcast. It's free, and their views are exploding because a lot of these dentists they're just driving to work and they plug in their iPhone or their smartphone. And then they just hit a podcast and they're listening to that while they're cruising into work. So and also I want to. I'm a big fan of your 170, almost 200 posts on Dentaltown. I wish you would do an online CE course for us so they can with examples of numbers. Because again, I have empathy for the dentist because I want to pull a wisdom tooth. I want to place an implant. They're not naturally gravitating to the numbers. And I think you would have to spell it out to them and show them forms. And, I think if you did an online CE course and really spelled it out for them also, I think that'd be great marketing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I like speaking. I like talking to people. The reason I did we renamed it to Start Your Dental Practice. So if you're listening on a podcast right now, whether it's Dentaltown Podcast or the iTunes Store, whenever we finish with this one, you can just look up Start Your Dental Practice because it should be out by the time you hear this, and you can subscribe there. So there's a little plug for me.
And that's my job is to find the great minds, and you came highly referenced. I sought out you. You didn't seek out me. You were highly referenced, and it's an honor to have you on here. And it's my job to take the dentist nose and stick it into where he or she needs to be focusing on. And you just can't spend your whole life in occlusion and root canal classes. You have to do that. And you know what's a thing I found? I was wondering if you found this. When I look at a lot of the most successful dentists, it's because while she's doing dentistry, her husband is the office manager, or they have a marriage support system where it's the same thing in Kansas. The most rocking hot wheat farms. While Dad was driving a combine, Mom was in there doing the payables and receivables and running the business. Do you of your 30 clients, how many of them is a spouse involved? Like when you're holding their hands, how many of your clients do you got to talk? Are you talking to the dentist or the spouse or both?
We typically talk. We almost pretty exclusively talk to the dentist. I don't think we have anybody that we talk to the spouse more.
And when you talk about divorce, what are the 3 reasons they divorce? Money, sex, and substance abuse. Money and sex and substance abuse. And they're not transparent with their staff, and then they get mad when they're losing money and their staff want to raise, and then they go home to their stay-at-home wife who thinks she's married to a rich dentist and she's spending a lot. And if that dentist was just transparent and the spouse and staff all knew what was going on, that's 1/3 of your divorce. That's 1/3 of all your stuff. And a lot of the substance abuse, where they used to think you were bad and need to be punished, they're starting to find out that a lot of that is you're self-medicating because you're in a highly stressful environment, and a lot of that stress comes from it. So maybe you're going home and drinking beer after work and not talking to your spouse because you're not showing them the numbers. And I just think that the best way to solve any problem is to get it transparent with all your friends and family and loved ones. And if you're stressed out about making payroll and you think you're going under, well, the first people that need to know this is your team and your family. And if they call you and get transparent and get everybody involved, it's all going to get worked out if you got the right players on your team. And if you show them all these problems, they're like, well, it's not my problem. Well, then you got the wrong employee.
Absolutely. So, addictive personalities in general, and it may not be, like you said, substance abuse. You can be addicted to business. I mean, I've met people like that as well, that their marriages have failed because they were addicted to the business, to the high of getting a little bit more money each month. So I definitely understand that. As far as like what you said about the dental practices of who I find to be successful or not, it's pretty, the trend that I always see is, number one, they've always got a fantastic leader at the helm, someone who really understands, maybe competitiveness a little bit, has a little bit of an edge to them, can actually go forward with things, can put people in their place, but is the best part, would always give you the shirt off their back. Same type of person, right? And then people that can, build lasting relationships with patients as the people that we typically see do the best. Like again, it all starts with the dentist. I mean, there's all these things about demographics and things like that, which I think are incredibly fascinating. But in the end, the guy at the helm is the one who's going to be, making that place a success or not.
But but do you think that leader is naturally born, or do you think they can be developed? How would a dentist, listening to you saying that, how would a dentist become more like that?
Sure, it's constant self-improvement. I think every person, business people aside, should be focused on self-improvement in some fashion. I mean, being aware of what you're doing every day, especially in today's technology society. It's so easy to go to dinner and you see an entire family sitting at their dinner table or at the table. They're eating out, and every one of them, the mom, the dad, the kids, everybody. If the dog was there, they'd probably have an iPad too, or on their phones. And so it's so easy to get distracted in today's day and age. Being connected to another person is really, really difficult for a lot of people, and actually being in conversations for a lot of people is getting more and more difficult because everyone's attention span is shrinking. So that is the first step to me to becoming a good leader, is being aware of who you are, where your strengths are, and where your weaknesses are. And it's just like the business. You look at the areas where you're deficient in, and then you work at getting better at them. It's not going to be something that changes overnight. There's I don't remember where I heard it, but there's a really great analogy about climbing Mount Everest. No one wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to climb Mount Everest, and then the next day they get on a plane to go climb Mount Everest. It's a process. It's long. It's not easy. You have to constantly be self-improving. And even the best leaders in the world, I'm sure if you were to ask them, they would say, yeah, I've got tons of flaws. I got tons of things I need to work on, and I'm constantly trying to do it. So if you're listening out there and you feel like, he said that you got to be a leader, you got to be willing to you got to be decisive, you got to be willing to make decisions, you got to be willing to have difficult conversations. Not everybody just naturally has those personality traits or have been in there, but over time you get better at it, right? I mean, do you feel like you're better at business now than you were, whenever you started out in it?
I think I'm better every quarter. Every
Exactly.
quarter for 20 years, I'm better than I was 3 months ago.
Mm-hmm. And how long ago was it that you you did the dental MBA session for the first time?
Well, I graduated dental school in 1987. I went back to MBA school a decade later.
Yeah.
Decade later, and
Yeah.
because I thought I need to focus more on this,
Every
and
time.
it's just self. And why can't you? And a lot of people say, well, I don't have time to go back and get an MBA. Okay, and the MBA for me was Monday and Wednesday 6 to 10 for 2 years. Number one, it was the most fun 2 evenings of the week. I mean, to go sit with 200 kids at ASU and talk about the greatest companies that ever exist of all time and wondering what does this apply to dentistry. When it was over, drove home. I was sad that I wasn't going to see these 200 kids every Monday, Wednesday night. And every dentist says, well, I don't have time to do that. And what do they do Monday night? They watch Monday Night Football for 4 hours.
Sure.
What do they do Wednesday night? They're watching, Dance with the Stars, or whatever, the Amish show, whatever. It's all reality TV, and it's like, you have the time. There's 168 hours in a week, and you just decided there is no time, but you can make time for anything that's important to you. And it's why I also think successful people are the ones that when they wake up in the morning, they look at all their problems, and they always go after the Godzilla, not the little termite and the ant and the cockroach. And most people look at the Godzilla and put that in the back burner, and then they go try to clean up some dirt and squash an ant and a termite and grab the little stuff. And then at the end of the day, they never got to Godzilla. And I always believe that when you start the day, you go after the biggest damn problem, because if you just solve that one thing, that would be an awesome day. But man, we are out of time. We are at an hour and 2 minutes on an hour-long program. Seriously, Jonathan, I just think you're a rock star. My friends, I actually have friends that know you and use you, and I have been told, I was probably told by probably 5 or 6 different people, oh, you got to interview this guy from your podcast series. You'll love him. He's awesome. And I really do hope you put if you're going to put on iTunes for free, I hope you put on Dentaltown for free. And and I really hope someday, I don't know if you could explain what you do in a 1-hour course or if it should be a 3-part series or whatever, but my job is to get dentists focused on what they need to be focused on in financial accounting, managerial accounting, statement of cash flow, balance sheet. They don't know any of this stuff. And the biggest contribution I think we could both make to dentistry is if we got Open Dental to put in that outsource zero.com. If we got dentistry and accounting package, we could literally retire tomorrow and say, I left the playground better than I found it. I was a good corporate citizen. I added value to dentistry. That would be the most amazing feat I can think of.
I would love to embark on that project. One thing, and I'd also love to do the continuing education. One thing that if anyone out there listening needs some of these KPIs that we've talked about, I do have.
What's a KPI?
Key performance indicator.
Okay.
Which is like the 25% number for staff and things like that. I actually created a report called the 15 numbers that will make or break your dental practice. And it's been downloaded about 1,000 times from different dentists.
Have you started a thread with it? Where that's the title of the thread?
I think it's in my signature, I believe.
Why don't you start a thread on Dentaltown that has that with a link back to your website and say, and you can always, it's not promotion, you say Howard told me to do it. And post that way, because with Dentaltown, no one out there practices alone. If they're on your website, they're alone. You can have links to it, but then a community could discuss what this means.
Sure, I never thought about doing that. It's always been kind of just a report I've given to clients, as honestly also as bonuses for being on people's interviews as a way to give back to their listeners. But I mean, if I'm being interviewed on this, I'm sure it'll probably come up if anyone wants to look at it. But if I'll do that, but I can also just, if you want to go to dentistmetrics.com/Dentaltown, I'll just put a link up there so that you can just download it.
And why did you go Dentist Metrics? Wouldn't it have been better the Dentist Matrix, and then you could. What was the Matrix?
Have Neo there.
Yeah, what was he saying? Do you want to take the red pill or the blue pill? What was that signature line?
Yeah, it's the red pill or the blue pill, and then I could probably have a mouse over of someone picking the red pill, which is going with me, or blue pill is not going with me. So. Well,
hey, it was fun. It was fun being in the Matrix with the founder of dentistmetrics.com. Dentistmetrics.com. Jonathan, thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time today.
Absolutely, anytime. I appreciate it.
All right, have a rocking good day, buddy.
You too.
And next time I visit my sister in Fayetteville, I'll swing over and see you in Little Rock.
Absolutely. And if you ever want to come on, start your dental practice, we'd love to hear your stories.
Oh, please email me, howard@dentaltown.com. It's the only email I have. And whenever you tell me when, and I'll be there. It'll be an honor.
Fantastic. Thanks
All
so
right,
much.
buddy. Take care.
A special thanks to Dr. Farran for having me on Howard Speaks. It was a really fun experience. I really enjoyed getting to speak with him and chat with him about my role in dentistry and how I help dental practices out. And so if you haven't already, if you don't know what the numbers are in your practice, it's extremely critical to your practice success. So to help you better understand those numbers as well as how to determine them, you're going to want access to today's bonus. I'm going to give a little bit of an audio clip of some of the different ideas that I have as far as measuring your success in your dental practice, some things you can do to do a spot check to really see if you need to do a deeper analysis. So it's really kind of that litmus test of, is this, am I doing okay? Am I not doing okay? So if you want a copy of that, just text practice to 33444. That's practice to 33444, or visit startyourdentalpractice.com/bonus if you're outside of the U.S. And this audio clip is going to be more for the practice owners that already own a practice. If you don't yet own a practice, this will be something you can kind of store in your repertoire to kind of put in your war chest of things you can do in the future, but you're not going to have as much use of it today for it. So that's it for today's episode, but that doesn't mean that the learning and implementation have to stop there. I've created a free report called The 15 Numbers That Will Make or Break Your Dental Practice. This report has been downloaded over 1,000 times by dental professionals. So if you want your free copy of this report that's going to outline what the most important numbers are in any dental practice, and it also includes how to look at your numbers, how to set goals, has a whole slew of really important information that is the culmination of all of my experience as a dental CPA, then just go to startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. That is startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Start Your Dental Practice community. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor and go to startyourdentalpractice.com/iTunes to leave your honest feedback and review on iTunes. It's going to help me create a better experience, a better show, a better podcast for you, the ambitious dentist. Your feedback really does help, regardless if you like the show today or not. If you didn't like the show, let me know, because it's going to help me create a better show and podcast for you. Lastly, if you know of anybody that would benefit from today's episode and today's content, today's guest, please feel free to share with them on social media or through email.